Okay, hi everybody. Today I'm making a demonstration video of the Docker technology because I think it's really cool, exciting, and it took me a little while to figure out how to use it at first. And whereas once I figured it out, I realized, oh, you know what? It's not that complicated, but I think the documentation there isn't the best. Yeah, so I figured I'd just make a video kind of showing people an introduction. I'm not by no means an expert at Docker, but I have played around with it. I have actually run apps on the internet with Docker. And yeah, so I know enough to get you started and playing around with it. So this is the official Docker website, docker.com, and their tagline is build, ship, run. An open platform for distributed applications for developers and sysadmins. And I think this is a good kind of summary of what it is and what it does. It's a platform for where you can build your app, most importantly, where you can ship it, deploy it, both to like within your own organization or for other people to be able to use your application. And then once you get it, and you can also use a Docker tool, do a Docker pull, which is basically to pull an image from the repository, then you use Docker to run the application. All right, and now what is Docker doing that's different? Why do I need this? The cool thing about Docker is it uses technology called containers, which means it includes the application, but it also includes all of the libraries that this application is going to depend on. You know, all the dependencies are packaged together with the app. It's also important to note that Docker runs on Linux. Okay, so you have to have a Linux host with a Linux kernel to run Docker, and within the container, you're going to run this application is going to run off that same Linux kernel. So it needs to be a Linux application, and you're going to be shipping it to Linux systems. Okay, but within, as long as it has that Linux kernel now, it doesn't matter if you're testing your app on Ubuntu and then pushing it out, distributing it to Red Hat servers. They should work in both locations. I mean, if it works in one, it should work in the other, because it's only using the kernel of the host, and all the libraries and all the helper utilities are being distributed within the container. So it's pretty cool that way. So and for instance, the reason why I installed Docker on this computer, I've used it before on previous computers, but this computer, which is my Chromebook, it's pretty light. My Chromebook's running Arch Linux, I should add. But but I don't have a whole lot of storage on it. But I wanted to be able to run an Ubuntu-like environment so I could make tutorial videos. And I didn't want to create an entire Ubuntu virtual machine, so I figured, oh, you know what, let me just use an Ubuntu Docker container, which is much more lightweight, uses a lot less storage, and that way I can sort of run a simulated Ubuntu environment without needing an entire virtual machine. Okay, so let me go full screen on my terminal. And oh yeah, so it's important to note, because I'm using Arch Linux, out of the box Docker, you have to start up the Docker daemon with system control start Docker. But I believe if you're using Ubuntu, it'll have that by default. Okay, so and the way to make sure that the Docker daemon is running, go Docker info, and it should give you a bunch of information. Okay, and so here we go. As I mentioned, so Docker uses containers, but the way that for today's demonstration, we're not going to be building any apps, but we're more going to be just consuming images that people have already built. Let me go actually back to my browser. If you go to hub.docker.com, this is the official public hub where they keep all the repositories of Docker images. Okay, so let's just type in Ubuntu into here. Now we'll see all the repos that match this search. As you can see, there's two different kinds of repos on the Docker Hub. There are official ones, and then there are public ones. So if you want to be safe, stick with official repos, because anybody who wants to, any user who's registered, I'm registered with Docker Hub, can make their own repo, public repo, and push it to the hub. And okay, so Ubuntu, let's say you want to have a CentOS server environment. There you go, official CentOS. Right, so basically all of the major distributions are going to have images up on the repos. And so for the most part, you're not going to be just running like a stock OpenSUSE image, but if you're going to build an app, then you're going to start with one of these images and then add on the things that are going to be unique to your application. Let's look up Arch Linux. Okay, so there's no official Arch Linux image, but there are quite a number of public ones. 292 to be exact. Okay, so, and you can do the same kind of thing from the Docker command line client by going Docker search and then Ubuntu. Okay. And if you do Docker images, it will show you the images that you have installed on your computer. So I have Ghost, Ubuntu, and Ubuntu Japanese Remix. Okay. And but out of the box, Docker doesn't have any of these, so you have to do a pull. Okay. So the way you would do this is with the command docker pull and then the name of the repo, for instance, Ubuntu Upstart. But it does take a couple of minutes to do this, however, so I'm not going to do a demo of that. But I already have 3 images included. And as you can see, it has sort of each repository, or each image has an image ID right here, which is sort of a unique identifier. And so when you're within the Docker system, I could use sort of this repository name and this image ID are sort of interchangeable. Although there's also this tag latest. So you could have, for instance, multiple Ubuntu images, and that's why the tag comes in handy. So I could have a 12.04 and a 14.04, in which case you would need to uniquely identify the image, you would have to have Ubuntu, I think like colon, latest or whatever. Or you could always use the image ID, unique identifier. Okay, so let's, so these are the images, okay? They're different from containers. Basically, containers are started from the image. And if you do docker ps-a, it will show you all containers you have on your system. I don't have any so far. But let's start one, okay? So let's go docker start Ubuntu, or you could use the image ID. So for instance, if I go E9 and then tab, I guess it doesn't autocomplete. AE3220B23, or what would be easier is just going start Ubuntu. And then it's important to note after the image ID, the whole idea of Docker is to run applications. So you have to choose a specific process to run. Otherwise, it'll just start up the container and then end immediately. Okay. So let's do docker start Ubuntu ls. Or no, let's do uname. Okay, let's see. Error response from daemon, no such ID, Ubuntu. oh, maybe it's docker run. Okay, sorry, wrong command. Docker run ubuntu ls. Okay, so what just happened there? And so by default, this, so what I did was I started the Docker application, and then I sent it the command run, then I sent it which image to run, and then I sent it the process. So what it did was Docker run took the Ubuntu image and created a container out of it, and then within that container it ran the command ls, which is for list, and Docker containers by default start as the root user in the root of the root directory. So as root, it just ran this command and listed out all the directories at the root of the file system, and then Docker, then once the ls command finished, it closed the container, and I'm now back at in my Arch Linux environment. If you see cat's etc issue, I'm in Arch Linux again. Okay, and if I do docker ps -a, and the reason why I'm doing -a, which is all, if you just do docker ps, it just shows the running containers. So there are no running containers. But if you do docker ps -a, let me make this a little smaller. As you can see, it has another unique identifier, container ID. This from the image Ubuntu, the command I ran was ls, created about a minute ago, exited about a minute ago because it took very little time to run. No ports, and it also has a name for this container. So unless there's this unique identifier, and it'll also give you a name that you can actually read. So, and the command I was trying to use before, start, that's actually for that actually works for containers. So if I do docker start cocky, whatever that is. Okay. Docker PSA. Okay, it ran it again, but I guess, yeah, it just instantly finished because the PS process is already done. Okay, so that was not very useful. Why don't we? And one of the problems was that was a short process, and as soon as the process ended, the container closed. So why don't we open a container and leave it open, and then play around with it? Okay. So if we go docker run, and then because if we want to be able to actually play with the container while it's open, we need to go -i, which means interactive, and then -t, which means give us a simulated TTY so we can run commands inside of it. Okay, -i.t, then the image Ubuntu, right, same image, and then the command we're going to run is bin/bash. Okay, so we're going to run the bash shell within this container. Okay. All right, here we go. Now, as you can see in my host on my Acer Chromebook, my user is Christopher, but now within the container, I am the root user. All right, so now let's go cat/etc/issue. As you can see, this container is running an Ubuntu 14.04 long-term support environment. Okay, but interesting, if I go uname all, you can see my host kernel, right? Linux blah 4.2.5-1 Arch. Okay, so this is the yeah, and so that's kind of one of the basics of Docker. It runs the kernel from the host system. Okay, so it's kind of cool. I'm running an Ubuntu environment, and yet I'm running also the Arch Linux kernel. Okay, and how can and if you want more proof that I'm actually running an Ubuntu environment, I can do apt-get update. And here we are connecting to archive.ubuntu. And it is checking all of my repos. So kind of cool. Okay, so as you can see on the bottom here, this is my tmux bar. So in my host Arch Linux, I'm running tmux. So I can split the screen, and right over here, I am back cat etc issue in Arch Linux. I'm in the host system. And so if I run the command docker ps, all right, processes, it'll show me, let me zoom this in. It'll show me that right now I'm currently running a Docker container. Here's a unique identifier. It's from the image Ubuntu. I'm running the command bin bash, created about a minute ago. It's been up about a minute, and its name is Reverend Swartz. Okay, and now I can switch back over to the left side, and as you can see, okay, it's done with that. Let's see if there are any packages that need upgrading. Okay, so we can actually upgrade 3 of these packages. Okay, so not that I really need to, but just to kind of show you that this is a real, well, not a real Ubuntu environment, but it's, you know, yeah, it sort of is Ubuntu. So I'm running Ubuntu within my Arch Linux host. And now, if we go to htop, which is my favorite process manager, let me see if we can find. You should be able to see the oh, you can't see the process running because it's finished already. Okay, well, let me run top over here, and then on this side, on the right side, search for top. Okay, if you can see right here, you can see top running as a process on my host system. Okay, and that's because yeah, and that is because it's not a virtual machine. The process is actually running on my host computer. It's just sort of isolated within the container. So so that is, the host system can see what the container is doing, but the container doesn't know it's in a container. Okay, it cannot see the host. All right. So so again, docker ps. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to docker stop. I'm going to stop this container from running. Let me just write reverend and then tab complete. Docker stop Reverend Swartz. Let's see what happens. And as you can see on the top now, I am back at my Chromebook. It exited there. Cat etc issue is Arch Linux. Okay. And now if we do docker ps, it says nothing because there are no running containers. Ps all. Okay, and we can see there are 2 stopped containers. And and this was something that kind of confused me at first, the whole docker ps-a. I personally think docker ps should just by default show all containers, but it only shows the running ones. And I didn't know this at first, so I thought I always had to spawn a new container from an image, and I ended up having like 20 containers on my computer. Okay, but let's see if I can restart that last Reverend Swartz. So docker restart rev tab autocomplete this. Okay, and it restarted, but I'm not connected to it, so I think if I go docker attach, then there we go. Okay. All right, so there we go. Okay, so that wasn't Okay, so now let's play around with something that's a little more useful. Okay, so and so now if you go to our Docker Hub, and let's go to Ghost, which is sort of a very lightweight blogging platform. Okay, and so even though you can do Docker search Ghost from the command line and find repos this way, the reason why I like using Docker Hub is because you get these pages with sort of a full description, and it sort of gives you some tips on how to run it. Okay, so over here it says how to use this image. Docker run name, and so you can name your container, some ghost, and I think D stands for, actually I don't know what that is. Is that run as a daemon? Man docker run. Oh, detach. I see. And then the process ghost. This is a pretty cool feature of Docker, which is port forwarding. Okay, so that's what I want to do. Docker run. Okay, Docker run -p, which stands for port, and it's host port and then container port. So I want to forward the default port for Ghost, I guess, is 2368. I want to forward that to 8080 on my host, and then detach and run the process Ghost. Okay, so let's put that in. Okay. Now, okay, I did that earlier, but let's go localhost port 8080, and boom, there we go. We have a blog, Ghost, just a blogging platform. We have a blog that is running inside of a Docker container. Let's search Ghost. I guess, maybe it's Node? Yeah, okay, I guess the server is running within NPM. Yeah, not too sure, but yeah, but we can run Docker and do Docker PS, which will show you that this container ID is running the image Ghost. The command is entrypoint.shell.sh npm-s. So I guess the Ghost command we ran was like either an alias for this or something, or a symlink. It's been created about a minute ago, up about a minute, and it's forwarding ports 8080 or 2368 to 8080 on the host, and its name is Jovial Pike. So yeah, and so you can run as many containers on your host as you have resources for, and with this port forwarding, it's pretty cool. You can just keep, mapping them out to different ports, and there's also some cool features for connecting containers. So you could run a database in one container, your application in another container. All kinds of cool things that you can do either on a server or on my Chromebook right here. I can be running containers and I can connect to them and just do a lot of cool, fun things. So I hope this will kind of be enough information to get you started. If you have any questions, you can write them out in the comments, or if you have corrections, anything that I missed, the technical details, you can include them too. And yeah, I hope you play around with Docker and create something fun. Okay, thanks guys.